Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We got a lot to discuss today. A lot of news. A curious signing in Chicago, which is one of many curious signings, but I think we understand the reason why they're doing them. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to bring them up because while I was waiting for the press conference to start for the Flyers, I had a long conversation with Marcus Hayes, who writes for the Inquirer and does a great job covering the Eagles, and he covers some Flyers too. And so we were kind of getting into it. And he said something to me that was kind of astonishing. Like, in all the years that Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Eagles, has been around, they really haven't fired coordinators. And they just, so this time they did. And they fired, they fired like one coordinator, the offensive coordinator, because the rest just ended up falling off, like contracts are out or they're not coming back. And so it is kind of a weird thing that's that spot they're in. But today, Nick Sirianni, he's the head coach. He had his press conference. I have no idea what he said, but he was there alone and they haven't hired the staff yet. And I find that fascinating. And I think that's a problem for the Philadelphia Eagles, because I think now the bloom is off the rose a little bit on Jalen Hurts. And I think the problem is now guys aren't flocking there who want to be coordinators, because I think they had enough time between end of the season and now to have their staff in order, and they don't have a staff yet. And I think that's a problem.
Well, I mean, okay. I know that in Chicago, they were looking for an offensive coordinator for Justin Fields, but they don't know whether Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback there or not. There's a whole thing where, this is the issue. It's like, okay, and we talked about this, Russ. Jalen Hurts may have been exposed as there are quarterbacks like Josh Allen, like Patrick Mahomes, who are throwers who can also run. Some better than others. Mahomes is very strategic. Allen does it a lot more, and he's big, so he can get away with it. Hurts is not as big, but he's the type of quarterback that is a runner who can also throw.
Right.
And there are a growing number of those quarterbacks. I mean, C.J. Stroud is, I think, a thrower who can also run.
Oh, he's definitely a thrower, yeah.
He's a really – now, the quarterback in Carolina – Bryce Young, he looks more like a thrower who can also pass, or a runner who can also pass.
Yeah,
and that's an issue, because if they're limited in terms of them being able to throw, all these quarterbacks, all these defensive coordinators in their divisions have to do is put a spy on them, and then you're forcing them to throw, which they're not good at, and then they're screwed.
Yes, but you have to be innovative in how you keep the spy occupied. And there are some coaches who are much better than that. And I think as you go through a season and you watch your team that you like and stuff, and if you're getting frustrated with what you're seeing in the schemes and everything, you can go and look, and I'll just pick Andy Reid, for example. Why do they always have innovative plays? Because that's a mentality. Everyone can do it. It's about what you believe in and how creative you can get. And you have to have support for that way of doing things. Some teams are much better at drawing up plays that are distracting. They're much better at timing them. And that is a trained behavior. And there's some coaches who fall back straight to the first thing. Let's run it on first, see if we can get 4 or 5 yards, make it a little harder on second to see if we're going to pass or run it again. And they go to the same stale thing.
Well, I will tell you this. So listening to one of the shows, and I forget who's thinking about getting him, it may be Seattle, but like Chip Kelly may be an offensive coordinator again in this league, right? Now he's the same guy that wanted to run like 1,000 plays a game. He wanted to check everybody's sleep. He wanted to run up to the line of scrimmage and have these guys just, basically playing as fast a tempo as he can. I'm sure he's changed since he's been at UCLA, but it's kind of a weird thing. And Pete, look, your team doesn't even have a coach yet. I don't even know what the direction of the Seahawks is, honestly.
No, neither do we.
Right, but Geno Smith is the type of, he's he used to be a runner who could throw, and he learned how to throw. I mean, in his 30s, he learned how to throw. But if you're talking about the history, and we'll get off of this because there's a lot of news today. If you're looking at like sort of the history recently of quarterbacks, Michael Vick was successful at running. He had a great arm, but he was not accurate. Randall Cunningham was the same way. He was a fantastic runner. He had a great arm, but he was not accurate. Cordell Stewart was a pure runner. The quarterbacks that have been successful are the throwing quarterbacks, but
they're harder to find.
They're harder to find, and you need somebody who is mobile. You can't have a statue back there like
Drew. You can't just sit in the pocket the whole day.
Right, yeah, you can't have a statue like Drew Bledsoe. One of the things about Brady, even though he was not a good runner, he moved in the pocket well, and he avoided the rush, and he was intelligent enough to get rid of the ball. So that, and same thing with Aaron Rodgers. And Peyton Manning. That's they have to, they want the mobility of the quarterback, and they have to sort of find their way. Tomorrow we'll talk about the Hall of Fame because I'm sure I wanted to get a word in on that. But we'll start the show. Go ahead, Eck. You can do the thing.
All right, ready? Okay. Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday, January 24th, 2024.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Pete Tessier.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Sorry, that date confused me for a second there. And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. It's the podcast that comes in Monday through Friday to fill you on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And
it confused you because you were right.
I know. It was 1:24:24 today. 1:24:24. All right. Yes. So I guess we got to start where we got to start with Hockey Canada. The situation going on with Hockey Canada.
Yeah.
And Pete, being Canadian, you're the expert in this whole thing.
I don't know. I don't think anyone's an expert.
Nobody's an expert.
But you know what? I think it's just easy to say you can't really name names or do any speculation until it's officially announced and something's there. I think the thing that, Russ and Mike and I chatted a little bit about before the show started was I wouldn't expect a correlation based on events to happen in a linear sense of what could happen to start speculating about that.
Yeah.
Anything that's going to come down with players and teams and where they're at is going to take a long time.
Yeah.
And I think it's more, we have to let the wheels of justice and investigation go properly and let that happen. And frankly, I think it's better to talk about what the NHL is trying to distract right now with than it is talk about this, because
that's a squirrel piece.
It is a squirrel. I'm just saying from a standpoint, what we know is what we know. There's nothing more to add to it.
Right.
Well, there is.
There is a little bit, but
at the Flyers press conference today, Danny Briere had to at least read a statement crafted by the NHL and did have to answer questions. No other GM has answered any questions or even attempted to, at this time. So that made his press conference a little more difficult. And honestly, he did answer some things about Carter Hart because he has to talk about not having his number one goaltender anymore for an indefinite period of time.
Well, I'll just
so to my point, Russ, let's talk about the impact of not having players and what it means on the team, because that's what we can talk about.
But let me just say this: if anybody wants, and I don't know how much you want the sort of gory details, the blow by blow of what happened with this, the Katie Strang piece that she retweeted from The Athletic from July of 22 is excellent. It provides a lot of detail of what exactly happened. Obviously, Rick Westhead from who works for TSN, and Robin Doolittle, who was the reporter who reported for the Globe and Mail, provided the breaking news of the players who are going to report and surrender to London police. Now, coincidentally, there are 5 players who have been put on indefinite leave of absence from their respective clubs, and all of them are from the 2018 World Junior team for Canada. So you can draw conclusions from that, but until the London police charge them, and because I'll just say this, and I'm not going to mention the names. We've heard these around the rumor mill for a year and a half.
Yeah,
there were names that we heard that are not one of the 5 guys. They were on that team, but they're not. And there is no proof that those guys were involved in anything. So had somebody gone out and said, Joe Blow was the guy, then then you would have slandered that guy. So that's why we're being extra careful and not naming the names, even though people think and people suspect those names, the players that were on leave are the ones.
I mean, we have to remember that there are a couple of interesting things about the timing of everything. This has been a very well timed out thing. I believe they've been planning how they were going to do this and when they were going to do this for a long time. People have known what was going to happen behind the scenes for a long time. This isn't like a sudden thing. The timing coming near the All-Star break.
I was going to say, before the All-Star break, when Bettman and Daly would probably be asked, where does this stand?
Right. And also getting, there's some time in there where teams aren't playing as much. I think that they're getting these players out. We don't know that these players are the players who, whose names are obviously out there. We don't know that they're involved. We don't know that they're just being brought in for questioning because they were in the place. We don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know about these particular guys, and whether or not they were directly involved or indirectly involved, we don't know, and it might just be them bringing them up there to question them, and using the All-Star break as a time when you're not going to affect the season that much, and then sending them back.
Well,
because this is going to be a long process, like Kate said.
It is going to be a long process. I think one thing that will be interesting to see, and we can speculate a little bit about this, I guess, is we have an entire new board and governance model at Hockey Canada.
Yeah.
How they deal with this now is going to be a very significant stake in the ground about whether they're willing to practice the preaching of change culture from the top down.
Right.
That will be very interesting. I would say, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, I would say that if you are a player for Hockey Canada, or pick any hockey federation for that matter, let's just say that for any hockey federation, and you had a chance to represent your country and you were found guilty in any kind of way on something in this vein, should your federation let you play?
If you're found guilty, no, I would say that.
And you do your time.
But
should you be like, whatever it is, you face your punishment, should you be eligible to keep playing?
No.
Yeah. No. I mean,
I think that's what we have to really get to here. Have you lost your privilege?
I'll use the example of felons in the United States. Once they are, you've paid your debt to society, you've served your term in prison, you're released. They can't vote. They lose their right to vote in elections for the rest of their life. Now, there are some movements out there to change that around, but right now, that's one of the privileges you lose if you are convicted of a felony in the United States. Now, you want to extrapolate that for Hockey Canada. If these players are found to have done something while under the auspices of Hockey Canada, and they're found guilty, and they've paid their debt to society, and who knows if they're going to serve any time. We're not going to go down that road. But they'd probably lose their right to ever play for their country again.
Yeah, why would you want that person representing your country and wearing that sweater?
I agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree, and I think those are the kinds of things that have to get discussed.
Sure.
And measured against when we have the details, when the wheels of justice have completed their slow turn. I think that'll be a very interesting thing, is now that there is action going on around this that's sort of been brewing for 5 years. And I think it was Eric Macramella who posted today on Twitter that said there is no statute of limitations on sexual assault. So
it's a complicated thing in the sense that the case did look like it was going nowhere for a little while. Now the cooperation is there because there's been a big change in Hockey Canada, and that therefore opened up the case again. And now you have this. So it's not like nothing has happened. It's just this is the way it's worked out.
Well, let me bring this back to hockey. And I don't know whether this was a motivation for this to get out now. Because, from what I've been told, a lot of this had to do with whether the London police were going to release a report and file charges. And that was what was sort of holding up the NHL taking any kind of action or whatever. But
right.
You've got 5 players, and we're not going to mention the names, but, one of the players is a well thought of player. There have been rumors about that player potentially having some interest in the trade market. How would you, if you're a general manager of a team and you're interested in trading for this guy, how can you trade for him unless you know what's going on in this situation? Do you think that maybe there was a little bit of motivation for the league to get this out there before the trade deadline so a team doesn't trade assets for a player and then finds out they don't have the player? I think that might be a little bit of, not a great big part of it, but a little bit.
I think the All-Star break is more of a factor, but but I do think that because we are still 2 months away, basically from. I mean, we're a month and a half away.
5 weeks.
A month.
5
yeah,
weeks.
sorry.
It's coming quick.
It's coming up quick, of course, but we are 5 weeks away, so that is something there. But I think that the bigger factor is definitely
6 weeks. 6 weeks.
Yeah, I thought it's late this year. It's
March 8th. March 8th.
So it's late. So it's like a week later than it usually is.
Yeah.
So we're I think that it will affect. Obviously, it will affect the players and the teams. And I think it affected the Philadelphia Flyers a little bit last night. I felt like as
There's no question it affected them on the ice not having a part there. You can see that there was like a hangover.
Yeah, there really was. There really was.
So I mean,
past it, and I think they got past it. But you have to remember, everybody's human, right? So you find out like Cam York's his best friend, and now his best friend's not on the team. Okay, I mean that's a legitimate thing. Now you have Sam Urson who looks pretty good and got up to playing maybe 40% of the games. Well, now it's Cam Urson and Cal Peterson.
Right.
The Flyers don't have much faith in Cal Peterson for good reason. He's not doing well in either league. So now, while they, on one hand, say, hey, we don't want to push Sam Urson too hard because he's young, on the other hand, they're sort of still in the playoff hunt. But do I believe they're not going to push Sam Urson too hard? No. I believe the coach is going to play him like 6 or 7 games in a row, definitely till the end of the break, and probably the first 3 or 4 out of the break. So, I think this is just where it's at, and it has changed the Flyers for sure because and these things don't show up right away, but I think over time it's going to. And that's not to say Urson's not a good goalie. He's just never been in
Right. I mean, and it's a totally different thing when you're a rookie, playing in a backup role, and then suddenly you're thrusted to the front of the thing on a team that's that's hanging on, but that's hanging in the playoffs a lot longer than everybody thought would. So. Yeah, for sure. I definitely think that is an issue. I gotta go 1 second. Give me 1 second, guys. I gotta take care of one little thing here. I apologize.
Yep. Okay. I'll just talk about this because I was amused by the announcement by the Chicago Blackhawks this morning of the 2-year extension for Peter Mrazek, and amused because Peter Mrazek essentially was not given away. They had to pay to take him. The Toronto Maple Leafs, he was terrible for the Leafs the 1 year. It was a contract where he was making over $3 million for another 2 years. And Chicago was interested in tanking to get Connor Bedard, so they took him, but the Leafs had to trade their first-round pick and got back a high second. So they moved down about 12 spots. Which is significant. Anybody who, Russ knows the draft. There's a difference between a low first and a high second. Now, the Leafs got Fraser Minton, and they like him, and they think he's a really good prospect, so it didn't really hurt them that much. But Mrazek helped them get Connor Bedard because he was not good, and the team wasn't good. But he has played well enough for them, and really right now, they have to overpay to get players to stay in Chicago. And now they want
they got to reach the floor. I mean, if there wasn't a cap floor, there would be 2 or 3 guys in Chicago without contracts.
Now they also want good people, and that's why they signed Nick Foligno for a 2-year deal.
I'm a good person. If you want like a 7th defenseman, I am more than happy to sign for the minimum in Chicago to help you out of your situation.
I want $4 million because they're passing out $4 million like they're candies because they signed Foligno for 4.5, I believe, Jason Dickinson for 4.25.
I think Jason Dickinson earned it. I do.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying he didn't earn it. But Mrazek
No, he hasn't earned it.
$4.25 million for 2 years. I'm just looking up his stats right now.
But Peter, this is the flaw in the system, kind of rewarding mediocre players, rewarding mediocrity, and the team is like, well, they're looking around, they're like, well, we got to pay somebody.
Right.
It's the flaw in the market average. So where you'd have to really look at it is if you, I'll say the thing again that I always say. If the NHLPA acted as a true union, 35 and older players would be the highest paid people in the league.
Right, because that's how it works.
Because it goes with experience and longevity and seniority. Well, it's still a free market. It's just we have to have a union to negotiate based on how we enter into the profession. And that's what it's there for. It's not the most efficient way, but it's what we have, because if you don't have that, you've got a whole host of other problems. You end up looking like the Premier League in England, or the Saudi League, or Live Golf. You pick your.
That's what this feels like. It feels like they gave him a Live Golf kind of contract.
Well, okay. Let me just because his stats are better than I thought they were, but that's this is Peter Mrazek's had a history of getting injured. And this is a situation where you're right. They had to get to the cap floor next year, but he has a 12-17-1 record, a 3.01 goals against, and a 907 save percentage with a really bad Blackhawks team. 907 for them is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't use that word.
Well, I'm saying, Russ, I mean, they're a bad defensive team, and 907 is a league average save percentage for a bad defensive team.
No, but all right. So as an example, there were plenty of Blackhawks teams that were awful that Tony Esposito played for. And he definitely
but not this bad. Not this bad.
He played for some bad teams. Mike.
No, but not this bad. Russ, they're okay. They're tied with San Jose for the worst record in the league. But Bedard, is going to be out probably another month with the broken jaw. They're going to have the first or second worst record in the NHL and they were the worst last year. So, it's. I mean, I understand the reason why, but it's just not. I mean, they're going to do this more often the next couple of years because they have to get to the cap floor. Mm-hmm. So that's
just reality.
I just want to bring this up, Mike. So here's an example.
Okay.
So, like when I was a teenager, I liked Doug Sotart with the Rangers, right? 76-77 Rangers were 29, 37, and 14. They weren't great. Sotart had a 904 save percentage, which for that era is really good. So as a 14-year-old, I was thinking Doug Sotart is a pretty damn good goalie. And he was, like an average backup. And there's nothing wrong with that. Doug's had a nice career. Hopefully he doesn't hate me for this. But that's all that's the same equivalency you're giving Mrazek now.
Oh, no. Russ, I'm not saying he's good. I'm not, I'm just saying he's a caretaker goaltender. He's like we were talking, this is a contract where Drew Commesso is probably their future goaltender. He's probably 2 years away from being ready to play in the NHL, maybe one. They have Arvid Soderblom as their other goaltender.
They Trey Augustine too. Don't leave him out.
Right. Okay. But they have a couple prospects, but they're not ready. They're not close, and they don't want to expose young goaltenders to being a bad team, getting abused playing for a bad team like Marc-Andre Fleury did the first couple years with Pittsburgh. Jake Allen took a long-term contract with the Canadiens. And he knew the Canadians were going to suck the next 2 or 3 years, but they needed somebody to put between the pipes, and better a veteran than to burn young guys.
It's not Augustine. Sorry, Augustine's with the Red Wings, but they do have somebody else.
It was Commesso.
I know it's Commesso, but they actually do have somebody else too.
Okay. Just to update something here, there was a report Elliot Friedman just retweeted. The London police are going to have a press conference on Monday, February 5th. Coincidentally, that's That's the Monday after the All-Star game. So that's
well, I think it makes sense because they're going to have more to say about their investigation. It gives them some time to do a little bit of work on it with possible people who might be involved in it, and then they can make a better thing. Frankly, like, I think there's just a lot of fatigue around why this stuff keeps happening, why it takes so long to figure out, and why we can't put an end to it. So while I think 5 years is too long to deal with this, I really hope the proper things are done so that no one can come out and say it was unfair.
Right.
It's Adam Gage on that.
Adam Gage. Okay.
Anyways. Mike, we have a big game tonight.
Yeah, no, I have two more things, and we'll talk about that game because I do want to talk about it. But Thomas Boyle in the chat just said there was another signing today, which was Cole Smith with Nashville. And, he's 28 years old, and they signed him to a 2-year deal with $1 million. Okay, that might be a little too much for him because he's an okay player. He's got 16 points in 46 games, but anything under $1.1 million.
Yeah, Trotz is filling in guys. He knows
it's variable.
Slightly competitive. They'll be slightly competitive the next couple of years because of Saros, and he's not going to go heavy on anything, but he'll fill in with those guys for sure. Yeah.
Now, what I wanted to talk about, because it connects one story that's interesting with another story that's been to use an expression from the Godfather. It's been a stone in my shoe for many a year. No, not that serious. The NHL released a statement today, and I'll just read the statement because it's brief. It says the NHL appreciates the interest expressed by Smith Entertainment Group to bring NHL hockey to Utah. This is Ryan Smith, the owner of the Utah Jazz, who is interested in getting into the NHL. During conversations over the past 2 years, we have been impressed by Ryan and Ashley Smith's commitment to their community and their passion and vision for Utah, not only as a hockey market, but as a preeminent sports and entertainment destination. Utah is a promising market, and we look forward to continuing our discussions. Okay, so he's a billionaire. They're building a new building in Salt Lake City. There is a proposal for, I believe it's the 2030 Olympics.
Yeah.
So, so they're going to build a new building. Now, this has been tied, Russ, to our favorite place in the American Southwest. And that's the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah.
And we have not heard squat.
Well, that's not true. I have heard something because
but okay, you fill in. But I remember about a month or 6 weeks ago, we heard about them buying a plot of land in Arizona. Okay, where the hell is that?
I asked somebody in construction, has anything happened? Who basically they cover that area, and nothing's happened. Nothing has happened since the announcement that they're thinking about getting this plot of land.
It is an absolute
I also feel like I have to say, because I have a friend in Italy, not a lot is happening with that rink in Italy yet either, by the way, for the Olympics.
Well, did you the rumor is that if they don't get it built soon, they're going to play the Olympic tournament in Torino and Turin. Because they already have the facility.
Right, they had the rink from like 1 million years ago, right?
From 2006.
I'm questioning. I don't know for sure. I know they've broken ground, but it took forever to break ground on that one in Italy. Yeah. And they're not talking about it much there to people who live there. So I don't know if that's making the deadline.
Maybe they're going to get all those workers who worked on the rink in Sochi. Remember and all the facilities in Sochi where they had toilets with remember the picture? There was a toilet that had, I think, no flush valve or something like that.
Yeah,
But no.
But as far as this story with Utah, look, the timing of it is weird, but it is meant to distract for sure. And we are going to talk about it because we can't help ourselves. But when the owner says a team could play in there next year, that doesn't bode well for the Coyotes. And so I also think that that's a little bit of a, hey, Coyotes, you better show us this land deal soon, or this could happen.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Russ. I spoke with someone yesterday in Southern California, completely unrelated to hockey, but about my regular profession and job. And we had a very interesting chat about this because they specialize in construction. And they said in their network, not a word. And so I think your conversation is 100%
We had the same
accurate.
conversation with a different guy.
Yeah, just a different line of coming to the same place, I think.
Yeah.
And I think from a standpoint of things, if it's a nudge or if it's a PR point of saying, hey, we've done our due diligence. Now we're going to do the PR of how do we extract this and make it look like we're all on board and not reluctantly. Because you got to remember, the NHL's got what, since 1993, 96 to undo the colossal waste of time and money in the desert with hockey. They've got to find a way to undo it. And now, like, they've got a willing owner, someone who's expressed it. They've probably done a lot more behind the scenes than this, because most people who are prospective owners who succeed, they're very quiet.
Yeah. Now, Dan brings this up. He says the NHL won't move the Coyotes when they can get $9 million in expansion fees. Yes, they will.
They will, because they did the exact same thing with the Atlanta to Winnipeg.
Right.
Right. So
the NHL wants to be in Arizona, but they can move this franchise to Utah and then expand to Arizona once they have their shit together, once they have a building, once they have, where they're, until they're not going to keep playing in a college arena with 3,500 friggin' people. It's stupid.
There is a lunatic out there who has the money, the wherewithal to back a loan in let's just say 500 million. Let's make it easy. Mm-hmm. To bring a team later on back to Phoenix, just give it to charity, man.
Here's something I think.
Do the world good.
Yeah, here's something I think Dan B's overlooking. The NHL can change their rules of relocation anytime.
Oh yeah.
If they want to charge a relocation fee of like $700 million, they could do it.
Yeah, they could.
So don't think they can't make money on this deal when they got a guy with deep pockets over in Utah, because they can.
But Peter, anything is possible because they're talking about going to Atlanta again. It's like not once, not twice. Now you're going to go back to a area where it didn't work twice. Yeah. You're going to go back for a third time. Now, I think it's worked in Winnipeg coming back. It's a Canadian market. It's a great hockey market. But, I know that people keep posting like how many people are at the arena in Winnipeg. Well, I think some of the factors this year have been, they thought Hellebuck, they thought, Scheifele, thank you. They thought Scheifele they were going to leave. They were not, and now they're like one of the best teams in the league. So I'm sure the walk up is fantastic there.
It's getting better. There are some challenges still, and I think the one thing that the Jets ownership really doesn't understand very well is entertainment value that happens in an arena away from the ice. You're there to watch the team, but people also go for the experience of being in a building, what it's like. The MTS Center is small. It's not just small, or the Canada Life Center. It's not just small in the actual seating. It's small in the concourses. The fan experience sucks in there. There's been all these campaigns for support local business. They finally had to get out of a deal with Anheuser-Busch or InBev or whoever owns Budweiser, because they were the beer sponsor. So the only beers you could find there were any of the Anheuser-Busch brands. So the ones they owned. Okay, that's not a bad thing, but great thing when you want security and stuff early days. Well, people's beer tastes have changed. People want to support local, but they couldn't bring in any local beer.
Right.
So now their whole club section stuff is no longer called the Bud King Lounge. It's called the Ticketmaster Play Now Lounge or something like that.
Yeah, because people want IPAs.
They want IPA. They want better beer. They want selections. But how do you go and say support us when you're not supporting anyone local? They had a marketing problem. They have an experience problem in the building on what they're trying to do, and they're gradually getting out of it. But I think the problem is so much of the messaging was veiled threats, and they've gotten out of that now. They realize they took a bad mistake. Look, True North has had the worst marketing out of any sports franchise I've ever seen.
Oh,
they don't have a Russ. They don't have a brand. They have a bland. It's that bad. It's not creative. It's built on nostalgia and all sorts of things. Well, the nostalgia is a lot of heartbreak unless you look back in the 70s in a totally different league.
I mean,
they haven't modernized the experience.
With the Jacksonville Jaguars as an example.
Okay, yes, but for an area that lives and breathes hockey, a winter city, you should always have 90% sold, 95%.
I agree.
You should. And they haven't done a good job of doing that. And they haven't done a good job of changing the experience. They haven't done a good job of finding incentives to come in and make it fun. And, I think they're slowly changing that, but people are suspicious.
Maybe they should have Winnipeg Jets ice fishing trips. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. They've got to get creative about it, and they got to recognize people come from more than just the product on the ice.
They could do things like, cruises, whatever, to get fans involved. There are things you could do.
Well, Russ, just Timothy Park, we'll talk about this after the show. Vic Fangio is leaving the Dolphins, going to the Eagles.
I know.
So
I'm going to say right now, I am not a fan of his. I have seen the Jets face his defenses, and nobody has ever been scared of the Dolphins defense.
Let me just read this line from a piece from The Athletic regarding the Coyotes. Word out of the December Board of Governors meeting per Pierre LeBrun and Chris Johnston was that either the Coyotes finally produce a concrete shovel-in-the-ground arena plan by the end of January, or else the team could get relocated. But Bill Daly said to The Athletic that he doesn't have a deadline for final completion of the process, just assurances that the process is proceeding according to plan. According to plan is a friggin' shell game to string this goddamn thing along. It's so ridiculous.
But the idea is, we kind of, with what Pete and I did, just being junior detectives, we figured this out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think this,
and hence the story today.
Yes, this is a shell game. It's been a shell game all year, and I'll bet you anything that other teams in this league are not going to accept going to a friggin' college arena where they're getting 4,600 people, and that team is not bad. It's not the product on the ice. It's the area and the ownership and how screwed up it is. And when is the NHL going to get their head out of the rest of
Utah being like Ben and Jerry's arena? I could see, because they love ice cream out there. A lot of possibilities, but I think the schedule gets made before the end of the season, right? So
it gets released around the NHL draft, but I think it's made in May.
Right. So I think we're going to have a pretty good idea by the end of February what's going on.
Yeah. Timothy, I'm hot under the collar about this particular subject because it's pissed me off for years. This team should not be in Arizona, and the only reason the NHL continues to stay there is because it's a big TV market, and they hope they get straightened out. But it's never going to get straightened out with the current ownership and with the NHL just placating this crap for so many years. Move them to an area that wants an NHL team that will support an NHL team. And then once they get their crap together, if you want to expand back to them, fine. But there are areas like Quebec City and now Utah and there are other places that have that maybe could serve as a good NHL market. But this thing is a friggin' joke.
I think their team color should be gray, and I think Mike would be happy with that.
Okay, let's finish off with the game tonight, Pete, because it's your team versus the team that I cover, and I'm looking forward to it, but I'm also looking at it with a little bit of dread because Ilya Samsonov is going to be the Leafs goaltender tonight.
Savior, you almost said it.
What? Oh, I cover both teams, Russ. So it's it's like, I'm sorry, it's tough for me sometimes. But he's playing for the Leafs tonight, and he had a good game against Seattle, but Seattle is not that great of a team, and they were shorthanded. And he's made 2 starts since imploding in late December. And the news came out today that Joseph Wall is probably not going to be back until like the middle of February because it's as I expected, Russ. He's been out for almost after the All-Star break will be 2 months. He's a goaltender and a high ankle sprain with a.
We knew he wasn't making that. We knew.
So, but I mean, in terms of the Leafs' chances against the Jets, who are leading the Central Division and one of the best teams in the league. The fact that they're playing against Samsonov should be greeted as good news for the Jets.
It's a battle of the backup because Brossois starting for the Jets.
Okay.
And Scheifele and Velarde are out. And right now, there's a bit of a goal-scoring drought going on in some key people in Winnipeg. And it's like, I would say right now, it's if I'm putting money down, I'm going on the Leafs, not because they're home.
Not me. I think this is a prove-it game for the Leafs.
Well, and I think they know it's got to be a prove-it game, and that's why I think they're going to come out.
I'm afraid they may not prove it.
Well, the first thing I wanted to bring up is, and what was the stat? I think the Jets had not allowed more than 3 goals in 35 games, and they gave up 4 against the Bruins, which is not a cardinal sin because the Bruins are a really good team.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming Hellebuck played in that game. That's why.
He played in that game, and I think to that streak, the team didn't care about the streak. The people are freaking out when they pulled the goaltender and stuff, and it's like, this isn't about that. It's about something. It's about a bigger purpose, and I appreciate that. I think the part that is starting to get a little concerning is that Rick Bowness sort of has this next man up mentality when someone goes down, and I think the fans and observers who are looking at things more in a chemistry sense and a production sense and a who drives play sense are correct in how a line should go as opposed to the way Bonus is doing it. So there are some different line combinations today. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But until someone not named Ehlers or Connor starts scoring, there's some problems. And
Bonus is pretty good at gauging the opposition, gauging the room. He's going to have them playing as tight a defensive game as he can. Like, he knows that they're not going to score the same amount of goals right now with those guys out.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to try and grind it out. I think that's what they're trying to do.
And they have the league best 104 goals against, which is 15 better than the next team. So they're tight and they're batting down the hatches.
And I will lay money there with a day off in between games. There has been some chat about some of the way the defense played in their own zone. 2 of those goals against the Bruins were preventable mistakes. And that game could have been a 2-1 or a 3-1 win for the Bruins with the empty netter. They gave up 1 for sure that was a preventable mistake, maybe 2 depending on your view on things. And I think there's probably a little bit of chat about that.
Don't worry, they're facing Ilya Samsonov.
Yeah, but the Jets D is an interesting case study, right? Because you've got Morrissey, who's been playing fantastic.
Yeah, Morrissey, he's such an underrated guy.
But after that, it's a lot of workman-like players. There's no one flashy. And they seem to be doing a really good job when they're all aligned and stuff. And part of it is, I think they've had forwards come back and deal with the zone exits much more efficiently than in the past.
Mhm.
And it'll be interesting to see if the Leafs try and disrupt that, because the Bruins did a pretty good job of that on Monday night. And they came in and pressured things in some scrambles a little differently than we've seen other teams do against the Jets. And I think, if Sheldon Keefe and his team are watching that, they're going to try and put some pressure on the Jets when they're trying to clear the zone in different ways, or when there's some scrambles in play, because they were not organized. And if they can create that chaos in front again, I think when you've got guys like Matthews on, who's a shark, when he's got the puck around the net, it's going to be difficult. Like, Brossoit is going to have to be on his toes.
Yeah, it's tough to differentiate between, how good Austin Matthews is or was a few years ago, but he just simply keeps getting better, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, he's quicker. His stick handling is much better. He's still got that, curl and drag move that he makes, so that he can do at any point. Now he's incorporated a between the legs move that has undressed a couple defensemen in a couple instances. He's been fantastic. The problem again with the Leafs this year, which has been the problem over the last few years, is depth. Is that the quality of the depth up front? It's the 4 forwards trying to find somebody who can play with them to accentuate their positives. Their third and fourth lines, their bottom pairing on defense. They're that and the goaltending. So it's tough to fill out a roster with quality players when you're paying half the salary to 4 players.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, like I've said this before, having watched, Phil Esposito, Matthews is a modern day Phil Esposito. Esposito had that 76 game season, goal season. Matthews is on pace for that. Espo, once he got into that creasy area, dirty area, you couldn't move him out. Yeah. He had the same kind of great move. I watched him, like, even with the Rangers as an older player, will back that team by scoring like 3 goals on his own when they were down by 4, to get him back in the game. And Matthews is that same guy.
And I know the leagues are different,
faster and leaner.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's the way they hunt, and it's the way they do things. And I think it's an astute observation. Another thing I think, if you guys don't know about this, well, Mike and Russ, you do, but for everyone else out there, this is a home-and-home series. Right after tonight, the Jets and the Leafs are coming back to Winnipeg for Saturday night in Winnipeg. So I think it's a very, you don't see these very often. And I think that'll be a very interesting thing to see what happens.
We'll hang out at Cabela's and see who you see there.
Yeah, exactly.
Peter, these teams don't like each other.
No.
I mean, the Neil Pionk thing with now Sandin is gone now, but Spezza came and beat Pionk. There's been been a lot.
Blake Wheeler had no
love
love
for
the
Leafs.
Yeah, God forbid. Everybody loves the Leafs. Come on, everybody does. You know that.
There you go.
All
hey guys, I got to jump off quick.
No, that's fine. We're going to end it.
We're ending this now for the departed Eklund, for the departed Peter Tessier. Perfect timing. And the present Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.